Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 242 based on novel. So let's start. Tang Wai wasn't far away, and she hurried over when she heard his voice. Even though she still hadn't fused with the Blue Silver Emperor, her martial soul was recovering, and she had recovered her strength as an 8-ringed soul master in this time. The evil soul masters had hurt her badly, but she had managed to keep her strength and improvements. She had recovered her martial soul, and her prowess was increasing linearly. She was now considered one of the stronger ones within the Tang sect. Hui Yuhao hurriedly said, "They are fine. Don't worry, eldest senior brother. But the Doling Empire is in trouble." There were many people around them, so the four of them went into a silent room as Hui Yuhao recounted the entire journey. Bei Bei's expression turned black as he listened to his words. An entire country's royal palace was flattened just like that. If not for the fact that Shu Sancha had the Doling Empire's royal blood in his veins, their problem would be much bigger than this, and the Doling Empire would probably crumble and implode. Bei Bei heaved a sigh and said, "The continent's situation is no longer something we can control. We can only do all we can now, and hope for the best. Do you have any suggestions, little junior brother?" Hui Yuhao lowered his voice and said, "The Academy has too much responsibility because they have to protect themselves. The Academy cannot abandon Shrek City's defenses, even though they are aware that our enemy will not attack. The Doling Empire and the Star Luo Empire's elites are also inside Shrek City. If this continues, when the Sun Moon Empire's great army launches an all-out attack, neither country will be able to stop the Sun Moon Empire no matter who they choose to target. The Academy has preserved the two empires' elites, but we cannot allow the Sun Moon Empire to destroy the Doling Empire and the Star Luo Empire just like that. Therefore, our top priority is to draw the Sun Moon Empire's army away from Shrek City. At least, their target will become a lot more evident after retreating. When that happens, we will have it easier, whether we are trying to hold them back or fighting against them. At the very least, we will not be dragged by our noses. The Sun Moon Empire's army is like a bone stuck in our throats. Shrek City's position has tied up the Star Luo and Doling Empire, and they are not having a good time." Bei Bei said, "But what can we do so that the Sun Moon Empire will retreat? That's almost impossible. They got away with destroying the Doling Empire's royal palace this time, and that manner can even be replicated." "I have an idea," Hui Yuhao suddenly said. "Ah?" Tang Wutong was astonished when she heard his words, not to mention Bei Bei or Tang Ya. "You have an idea? What's your idea?" Bei Bei said in surprise. Hui Yuhao clenched his fists subconsciously. The only way to deal with the Sun Moon Empire's overt scheme is to surprise them. And I am the surprise factor. I'm going for a rest, eldest senior brother, teacher Xiao Ya. Hui Yuhao turned to leave as he finished his statement without even explaining things properly. Bei Bei frowned, but he didn't chase after Hui Yuhao and allowed him to leave. Tang Wutong hurriedly followed behind him. Tang Ya nudged Bei Bei and asked, "Why aren't you asking him what he intends to do?" Bei Bei shook his head and replied, "I trust him, so I'm not going to ask. Yuhao has grown much more than we have over the past few years, and his personality has become increasingly stable and mature. If somebody else were to go through this matter, that person would probably have panicked a long time ago, and wouldn't know what to do at all. But he's not panicking, can't you see? His eyes are determined, and it's clear that he's had a plan all along. Since that's the case, why should I ask? All we must do is deal with our own matters adequately. Our operation can continue once the Sun Moon Empire retreats." Tang Ya nodded and said, "All right, let's go do some work." Hui Yuhao returned to his room, and Tang Wutong followed him inside. "What's your solution?" Bei Bei didn't ask, but that didn't mean that Tang Wutong wouldn't. She also trusted Hui Yuhao, but she was much more worried about him at the same time. Hui Yuhao didn't tell Bei Bei about how he had tried to resign at the Sea God's Pavilion before this. Even though he wasn't successful, Tang Wutong could tell from his mannerisms what he was about to do. Hui Yuhao exhaled deeply, and he contemplated for a few moments before he pulled Tang Wutong over and whispered something into her ear. What? But will they agree? Hui Yuhao smiled plainly and said, I will make them agree. This plan has more than one goal. Tang Wutong was worried. But you? Hui Yuhao smiled. What? Do you not trust my strength? Then I'll go with you. Tang Wutong retorted. Hui Yuhao shook his head. No, my plan cannot be completed like that. Furthermore, we can't fuse our martial souls because martial soul fusion skills consume too much energy and are not suitable for prolonged battles. Don't worry, you can sit back and watch my enemies, and you can watch your husband massacre everyone. I haven't married you yet. Tang Wutong snapped unhappily. Yes, my dear. When is my father-in-law coming back? I can't wait any longer. Come, let me give you a kiss. My skin is quite thick anyway. The sun was already high in the sky as it shone over the great earth. A new day had begun, and the Sun Moon Empire's deadline for Shrek City was here. However, strangely, the Sun Moon Empire wasn't doing anything at all. They weren't even pushing forward. They just stayed 45 kilometers from Shrek City. This distance wasn't considered close, but it wasn't considered very far either. Seoul engineers would only need about 15 minutes of flying at full speed before they could launch an onslaught against Shrek City. Shrek City had been wary and vigilant over the past few days. Now time was up, and nobody knew whether the Sun Moon Empire would make their move. Every Seoul engineer in the city was nervously prepared for battle with their soul tools, and there were quite a few stronger soul masters patrolling outside the city. Shrek City's surveillance soul tools were inferior to the Sun Moon Empire's, but Shrek City had a lot more soul masters than they did. Simply put, if the Sun Moon Empire didn't have their formidable soul tool fronts and linked soul tools, Shrek City might not lose if they fought head-on. The atmosphere between both parties was a little tense, and an epic battle could occur at any moment. The quieter the Sun Moon Empire was, the stronger the feeling of pressure before a rainstorm. Right in this moment, a single person appeared soundlessly on Shrek City's battlements. No, he wasn't the only one. Someone else stepped out after that person appeared, her long, pinkish-blue hair draped behind her back as she stood next to him. Hui Yuhao gazed into the distance. Even though the Sun Moon Empire was 45 kilometers away, the weather was good, and he could still roughly see what was going on with his vision. The Sun Moon Empire's great army was still over there. Tang Wutong stood beside him quietly, and she pulled over her long hair from behind her back and began to comb it. Combing hair on Shrek City's battlements wasn't something that just anyone would do. The commanders on top of Shrek City walls responsible for patrolling stood near him as they looked on silently with respectful expressions on their faces. Everyone knew what Hui Yuhao looked like. Ever since that day when he had bravely challenged the Beast God, Shrek City's Soul Masters and the two Empires' Soul Masters could all recognize him. Hui Yuhao did lose that day, but he managed to survive after the Beast God had attacked him at full strength. That proved how powerful he was. The Beast God, Di Qian, was the strongest individual on the continent, stronger than even an ultimate Doluo. Therefore, Hui Yuhao didn't waste any words at all as he stood on the battlements. Furthermore, the main defensive force which was on the city walls was the Heavy Artillery Soul Engineer Legion, and Hui Yuhao was their commander anyway. He just stood there in silence and continued to watch. Tang Wutong finished styling her hair as braids fell down to her hips and extended to the top of her head. Her hair was tied into a scorpion braid. You should still stay here, Hui Yuhao glanced at his lover exasperatedly. Tang Wutong shook her head. I don't have to participate, but I have to be beside you. Hui Yuhao caressed her head as he came up next to her cheek and kissed her gently. You smell good. Tang Wutong was embarrassed. Everyone is looking. Let them look, I'm kissing my wife. Let's go, we don't have much time. Hui Yuhao held Tang Wutong's hand as he spoke, and they soared into the sky as everyone looked on. Nobody saw them use flying-type soul tools as they flew toward the Sun Moon Empire just like that. They've flown away. Shrek City Defense Army looked on with widened eyes and slack jaws. What's happening? They are flying away just like that? Why are they flying toward the Sun Moon Empire? What are they trying to do? Quick, report to the Academy. Tell them that Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong have gone toward the Sun Moon Empire camp. They thought about the Sun Moon Empire's demand for Shrek City to hand Hui Yuhao over, and the City Defense Army's general began to sweat. Who knew what they were doing? Were they handing themselves over? Faint light flickered as a dash of ice-cold light flashed across Hui Yuhao's face. He flew through the air as his spiritual power surged forth like a tidal wave. However, his spiritual power went up into the sky instead of toward the Sun Moon Empire's camp. Hui Yuhao's terrifying spiritual detection covered a vast area as aerial surveillance soul tools appeared one after another within his senses. Shrek Academy had many powerful individuals, and that was the reason why the Sun Moon Empire didn't dare to allow their aerial surveillance soul tools to fly too close to Shrek City to avoid any losses. But these aerial surveillance soul tools had nowhere to hide in front of Hui Yuhao's formidable spiritual power. But they had already discovered his presence at this point, and they immediately retreated towards the Sun Moon Empire's camp like a wave. Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong didn't hide themselves. Hui Yuhao had an excellent reputation in the Sun Moon Empire. Besides his prowess, Hui Yuhao had destroyed the greatest number of the Sun Moon Empire's aerial surveillance soul tools. Therefore, once the soul engineers who were controlling the aerial surveillance soul tools discovered him and immediately reported to their superiors, they hurriedly withdrew their surveillance soul tools. Hui Yuhao withdrew his consciousness in the next moment. He wanted this outcome. The Sun Moon Empire had given them pressure all this time, but this time, it was his turn to give them some pressure. This was the only way that his plan could continue. They quickly covered the remaining distance to the camp, and it didn't take long before the Sun Moon Empire's camp appeared clearly in Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong's vision. Hui Yuhao squinted slightly, his expression as cold and solemn as ever. Hui Yuhao was as calm as he could be under such circumstances. Dense energy waves appeared from the Sun Moon Empire. Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong could evidently feel the concentrating energy from the ground even though they were in the sky, as soul tool fronts began operating one after another as they locked onto Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong. A single person could do nothing against these soul tool fronts no matter how formidable that person was. The Sun Moon Empire had already proved that fact with the Beast God. Even though the Beast God had also destroyed a soul tool front, the Sun Moon Empire had managed to force him away to the point where evil soul masters took that opportunity to hurt him. Hui Yuhao was strong, but he was still just a single person. However, the soul engineers who were locking onto Hui Yuhao didn't have that thought for a long time before something happened. Hui Yuhao vanished. Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong vanished at almost the same time in midair. They didn't leave any traces at all, so all the waves that were locking onto them immediately became useless. Hui Yuhao was strong enough to conceal himself even before he became a titled Dolor, not to mention now. Shaking off those surveillance soul tools was simply too easy. The difference between Hui Yuhao and Di Qian was that Di Qian could manipulate spatial power, but Hui Yuhao relied on his martial soul's strength to integrate himself into his surroundings. Furthermore, Hui Yuhao could imitate any kind of energy wave with his formidable spiritual senses. Even a few ultimate Dolor probably wouldn't be entirely certain of finding him under such circumstances, let alone these surveillance soul tools. At least, these soul tools couldn't do that with their current technological standard. Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong vanished, but the Sun Moon Empire's camp didn't loosen up because of that. The soul engineers were very clear, no matter what class they were, about what would happen to them if a transcendent Dolor managed to infiltrate their soul tool front, or if one came close to them. Hui Yuhao's clash with Di Qian gave them a deep impression and lesson. There were still traces of the frightening fusion of darkness and ice on the ground, and those traces weren't something that could be dispelled within a short period of time. A sigh could be heard from the sky before Hui Yuhao's voice traveled far into the distance. Didn't you guys want Shrek City to hand me over? I'm here now. Who's coming to receive me? Hui Yuhao's voice was very plain and monotonous, but it traveled far into the distance as it covered the Sun Moon Empire's entire camp. However, not a single surveillance soul tool could detect his exact location, and the tense atmosphere became even more intense. Juzi could naturally hear his voice from her commander's tent. Furthermore, several messengers were already reporting what was happening outside to her. Juzi was still feeling a little melancholic. The reason for that was that she had just received news about the evil eye tyrant Soul Engineer Legion's commander, Xie Xianchen, through their transmission soul tools. The evil eye tyrant and Imperial Dragon legions had been successful in their ambush against Lingdo City, and they had successfully destroyed Doling City's royal palace. But just as they were prepared to retreat, many evil soul masters appeared to ambush them, which resulted in the two legions sustaining heavy losses. Even the Imperial Dragon Legion's commander, Xu Qianyuan, had perished. Juzi's first reaction was to restrict this news when she received it. At least, she had to do it before Xie Xianchen and the others got back. Evil soul masters ambushing two beast-ranked soul engineer legions was big news, and she couldn't hush this matter up even with her reputation as the war god empress. What did beast-ranked soul engineer legions represent? They represented the military, not to mention that the Imperial Dragon Legion was involved. The Imperial Dragon Legion represented the royal family. Xu Qianran himself would have to deal with this matter carefully even if he were here himself, because this matter involved both the military and the royal family, let alone Juzi. And the evil soul masters? They represented the Holy Ghost Church, who had two ultimate Doluor. Furthermore, the Holy Ghost Church's supreme leader, Zhongli Wu, was supervisor to their army right now. Ju said I didn't understand why the Holy Ghost Church would suddenly ambush two beast-ranked soul engineer legions, but she believed Xie Xianchen. From her perspective, Xie Xianchen was the weakest among the four beast-ranked soul engineer legions commanders. However, he had the clearest mind, and that was the reason why she gave him that heavy responsibility. Xie Xianchen had analyzed the Holy Ghost Church's aim in detail in his transmission. The Holy Ghost Church was antagonizing the military, and they were going after the Soul Engineer Legion's strength. At the same time, they went after the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion's commander, Xu Qianyuan. The storage-type soul tool that Xu Qianyuan was carrying on his body had disappeared during the attack, and there were likely to be several Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells in that storage soul tool. They didn't know how many there were exactly. Was that reason enough? That reason wasn't enough for normal people. Attacking two beast-ranked legions was big news, after all. But for the Holy Ghost Church, who had always been selfish, and who had only cared about themselves to the point where they didn't care about innocent lives, this reason couldn't be any more normal. Juzi was very clear what the Holy Ghost Church's true leader, Yi Shishui, used to charge her death god. Not long ago, the Holy Ghost Church had used several tens of thousands of spirits from soldiers who had perished to attack the beast god. Furthermore, Zhongli Wu had personally led a team to chase down and kill Di Qian. Zhongli Wu and the others had returned. There had been more than 10 evil soul masters when they had left, but a third of them had disappeared when they returned. Zhongli Wu's expression had been stern and solemn, and it was evident that their plan wasn't successful. The beast god wasn't that easily assassinated, and this outcome also benefited Juzi. This was what she had hoped to see. However, there was an uproar within the army when Zhongli Wu and the others used the souls of dead soldiers for that purpose. The Holy Ghost Church's powerful individuals got away with it, but Juzi had to take a lot of pressure. There was a reason for the army's fury. Soldiers sacrificed their lives for the country, and they were already heroes, but their souls after their passing ended up being used by Holy Ghost Church's evil soul masters. They were even converted into avenging spirits, and that was a fact that the army couldn't tolerate at all. The conflict between the Holy Ghost Church and the military was continuously building up. Under such circumstances, it wasn't hard to imagine that the news that Xie Xianchen had brought back wouldn't just be lighting a fuse. That news would cause a violent conflict between the army and the Holy Ghost Church. Juzi wasn't that afraid of the Holy Ghost Church. The military had many formidable individuals, and there were quite a number of Class 9 soul engineers. The army even had several beast-ranked soul engineer legions supporting them. But what about Radiant City? There were two evil soul masters there, and one of them was the death god Doluor, Yi Shishui. The Holy Ghost Church's foundations were also at Radiant City. If something happened here, the Holy Ghost Church would make a move in their capital. She didn't care about Xu Qianran's life, but she cared about her son's life. Furthermore, the Sun Moon Empire was in an excellent position. She couldn't afford for it to fall into disarray. Juzi was even more conflicted under such circumstances, and she found it difficult to make a decision despite her intelligence and caliber. She could only temporarily suppress the army's fury. At least, she couldn't let a conflict happen between the army and the Holy Ghost Church before her setup was complete. That wasn't beneficial for her. Furthermore, Juzi felt a little strange. Who did the Holy Ghost Church deploy to ambush the two beast-ranked Soul Engineer legions? Juzi had a rough estimate of the Holy Ghost Church's Soul Masters. The Sun Moon Empire had also thoroughly investigated that matter before. Juzi was very aware of those two Soul Engineer legions' capabilities. Even if they were more relaxed after their successful attack on Doling City, anybody who wanted to ambush them had to be extremely powerful. Undead creatures? Many undead creatures. That does sound like the Holy Ghost Church's methods. But there were a few doubts in Xie Xuanzhen's report that attracted her attention. Their enemies could hide themselves. That fact alone made Juzi's heart skip a beat. There were Soul Masters who knew how to conceal themselves, and there were also evil Soul Masters who could do the same. But she knew of only one person who was adept at hiding himself and fighting battles alone. Furthermore, Xie Xianchen also told her that there was somebody who possessed incredible abilities of ice and snow among the evil Soul Masters who had attacked them. The evil Soul Masters had relied on a kind of domain-type ability of ice and snow to create a death trap and besiege them. Ice and snow? Stealth capabilities? Juzi wouldn't be fit to be known as the War God Empress if she still didn't suspect him when these two capabilities existed at the same time. Juzi could only force a laugh when she thought about that person. Juzi finally had a taste of her own medicine, and how awkward the situation was. She knew what her opponent was doing, but there was nothing she could do to stop it. She couldn't even expose her opponent's identity. Wasn't that right? She was positive that Hui Yuhao was likely the perpetrator who had ambushed the two beast-ranked Soul Engineer legions, and the Tang sect's other members had probably assisted him as well. But she couldn't reveal that. Why couldn't she? Because she also wanted to deal with the Holy Ghost Church. Hui Yuhao had crushed two of the Sun Moon Empire's beast-ranked Soul Engineer legions and framed the Holy Ghost Church. In some sense, he was helping her. But the timing wasn't right, was it? Furthermore, Hui Yuhao had also killed Xu Qianyuan. Xu Qianyuan was a prince who held the highest authority. His death meant the royal family's strength and authority would be reshuffled once more, and she had had a decent relationship with Xu Qianyuan. Hui Yuhao's act messed everything up, but she simply couldn't reveal his identity. She would waste her past efforts if she did that. If the army and the Holy Ghost Church's relationship was bridged, and if both the army and the Holy Ghost Church wanted to attack Shrek City, then that would be worse for her. Juzi had made use of Shrek Academy's responsibility to defend themselves many times, while Hui Yuhao was the one who was using her in this moment. Juzi had to admit that she shouldn't have told Hui Yuhao back then that she was targeting the Doling Empire because that fellow was just too smart. But Juzi didn't feel like she had lost. Doling City's royal palace was laid to ruin, and even if both beast-ranked Soul Engineer legions were massacred in the end, she would still be the ultimate victor. Reality proved that Hui Yuhao and the others were too late after all. The situation was very messy, and that forced Juzi to divide her mind to deal with all sorts of problems. She was still very busy with work when she heard Hui Yuhao's voice from outside. Juzi's first reaction when she heard Hui Yuhao's voice was, so the person who ambushed the two legions wasn't him? Yes. If he was the one who did it, why would he be back so quickly? And what is he trying to do? Does he really think that I wish to capture him? Or is he trying to use our relationship to stump me? No, that's not how he does things. Juzi was a little taken aback, and her mind felt a little blank. Just as Hui Yuhao himself had said, he had to give Juzi a surprise to deal with her. He had succeeded for the moment. Xie Xuanzhen's report meant that the two legions' remaining soldiers would only return to the army at night. That was because they had to cover a lot of ground, and another reason was that they had become extremely tense and alarmed after Hui Yuhao ambushed them continuously. They had no choice but to be careful. Furthermore, their previous exploits made them extremely fatigued. They were already trying their best to reach their camp by nightfall. Therefore, Juzi immediately realized after her momentary blankness that Hui Yuhao was probably still using her. A smart person who wished to trump another had to think more meticulously. If Hui Yuhao had precisely calculated the time that these two legions needed to return, what was he doing, exactly? Pass my order. The Fire Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion is to be mobilized, and they will escort me to take a look at what that fellow is doing. All Soul Tool fronts, prepare linked defenses but hold fire. Notify all Soul Engineers Class 8 and above to gather in the sky and prepare for battle. Juzi gave a series of orders before she walked out of her tent. Juzi wasn't concerned about her own safety at all, but Hui Yuhao was the one who was provoking her. She didn't believe that he could take her life no matter how they fought each other. Otherwise, she wouldn't have returned alive from that mystical demiplane. Faint light flickered in the air, and every Soul Engineer from the Sun Moon Empire pulled long faces. They couldn't lock onto their enemy. What was happening? This meant that this fellow could enter their camp as and when he wanted. Safety first, Commander. We don't know where that person is. Juzi had just stepped out from her tent when several Class 9 Soul Engineers surrounded her. Furthermore, they released a linked defensive barrier and contained her within it. Juzi smiled faintly and waved her hand. It's all right. He doesn't dare to venture too deeply into our camp. He won't be able to escape if he comes in. Let's go and see what he's doing. These words were simply intended for those around her. Juzi was very clear about how strong Hui Yuhao's survival abilities were after finding out about his demiplane. Commander, the Fire Phoenix Legion has been assembled. Juzi nodded. The Fire Phoenix Legion shall follow me into the air. Activate the Legion's linked defensive barrier. Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong were still in the sky, but they were concealed with imitation, and nobody could see where they were. Light continued to flicker as a single sphere of light glowed in the sky. A fiery red sphere slowly rose from the Sun Moon Empire's camp in the next moment. The sphere was translucent, and what was happening inside could be faintly observed. The Fire Phoenix Legion Soul Engineers were all wearing fiery red soul tools, and their equipment was especially glaring. The Fire Phoenix Legion status among the 4 beast-ranked Soul Engineer Legions was initially second only to the Imperial Dragon Legion. Ever since Juzi took over and after she received Xu Tianran's adamant support, along with her rising reputation as the War God Empress, the Fire Phoenix Legion's status was growing increasingly comparable to the Imperial Dragon Legion's status. Beams of light flared one after another in the sky. The air was clearly twisting and contorting a little due to the Fire Phoenix Legion's linked defensive barrier. This was a phenomenon due to high temperatures, as the Fire Phoenix Legion soul tools were mainly fire-type weapons. Juzi was hovering inside the sphere. She was wearing a magnificent human-shaped soul tool that was golden red in color which perfectly protected her body. Brilliant and flowing light coursed around this human-shaped soul tool, and this soul tool was different from the Sun Moon Empire's other human-shaped soul tools that Hui Yuhao had seen. Even though he was only observing from afar, Hui Yuhao could faintly feel that this human-shaped soul tool's capabilities were comparable to that of his icy war god's armor. This set was possibly even superior in some respects. For instance, Juzi could use this human-shaped soul tool which was conspicuously at the pinnacle of Class 9 soul tools even with her cultivation rank. This meant that her human-shaped soul tool could reduce its demand for using it. This characteristic was something that the icy war god's armor didn't have. Of course, it also depended on who was wearing this human-shaped soul tool. Juzi was wearing this human-shaped soul tool more for her personal protection than anything else. Hui Yuhao reappeared in midair with a solemn look on his face. Many soul tools beneath him locked onto him once more as he revealed himself. However, the soul engineers responsible for locking onto his position quickly realized to their astonishment that they seemed to be locking onto nothingness. They couldn't detect any living presence at all. Hui Yuhao was now a veteran, so he wouldn't put himself in danger. What he was doing was actually very simple. He used spiritual interference domain and created a hologram 100 meters away from him. The Soul Engineers could lock onto that as much as they wished, but they still wouldn't find his precise location. Furthermore, Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection covered the entire place. As long as it didn't touch any spiritual barriers, any soul tool that was about to fire would appear within his detection range, hence he wouldn't have any problem dodging attacks. You're the Sun Moon Empire's war god empress. Hui Yuhao's icy-cold voice traveled into the distance. However, his tone seemed to change a little when he was uttering the last few syllables. There was no way his tone couldn't change. There was a small hand pinching his waist and twisting his flesh 180 degrees. Keep pretending. Tang Wutong thought to herself resentfully. Juzi stared at Hui Yuhao coldly as she lowered her voice and replied, "Yes, I am the Sun Moon Empire's empress. I am also this army's commander. I didn't expect you to show yourself. Since you're here, then don't resist capture. Seems like Shrek City can't protect you after all." Their eyes were both very cold. They were so far apart, and there was also a protective barrier around her, so they couldn't see each other's eyes clearly. But strange sensations appeared in their hearts in this moment. This wasn't the first time that they were encountering each other on the battlefield. However, this was the first time that they were facing each other with their initial identities as everybody else looked on, and as enemies. Juzi wasn't careless because Hui Yuhao was her opponent. On the contrary, she felt a lot more alert and wary because Hui Yuhao was the one who was hovering in the sky opposite her. It didn't matter that she had gained the upper hand during their previous few encounters. She was very clear with her understanding of Hui Yuhao about how terrifying an opponent he could be if he unleashed his potential. Reality also proved this fact, because the damage that Hui Yuhao had single-handedly dealt to the Sun Moon Empire rivaled that of the entire Heavenly Soul Empire. How many surveillance soul tools had he destroyed, not to mention soul engineers, soul tool fronts, and whatnot? Juzi stared at Hui Yuhao in the distance, and she was already very certain that Hui Yuhao was the perpetrator who had ambushed the two beast-ranked soul engineer legions. It has to be him. Hui Yuhao said plainly, "I'm responsible for my own actions. You've asked for me, and so I am here. I have already detached myself from Shrek City at the same time. Right now, I represent only myself. Catch me if you can. Whoever isn't convinced can come get me." Juzi grunted coldly and retorted, "You seem very confident of yourself. Do you really think that you can fight against my army of 100,000 men all by yourself? You only have two choices, submit to us or die." Hui Yuhao laughed. "You want me to submit? Dream on. Who are you to ask me to surrender? Because of those soul tools that you have beneath you? If you understand me, then you should know that those soul tools are useless against me. I'm here today to tell you that I will be a plague to your army from today onward. I will follow you wherever you go. Perhaps killing you will not be easy, but I am confident of killing your subordinates. Your linked defensive barriers cannot be activated continuously, and they can't cover your entire army, can they?" Hui Yuhao's voice was projected into the distance with his spiritual power, and every one of the Sun Moon Empire's generals' expressions changed drastically when he said those words. They had all seen Hui Yuhao's prowess before. Even though they didn't know what rank he was at exactly, he could take a hit from the beast god and survive. He had to be a titled Doluo, at the very least. Normal titled Doluo weren't a big deal, because they couldn't hide from the Sun Moon Empire's various surveillance soul tools. They would be blown into bits before they could come near the Empire's army. But this fellow was different. Even though they didn't know how he was doing what he did, they knew that could use his abilities to hide from all of their surveillance soul tools. If a formidable individual like him was determined to massacre and assassinate everyone without any care for his identity, and could not be detected, then everyone would be in danger. Naturally, he wouldn't target the normal soldiers. Instead, generals and soul engineers would undoubtedly become his targets. They would probably be fine for 1 or 2 days, but what if this was done over a long period of time? How many people would he kill? Nobody knew. Of course, they weren't completely helpless, but dealing with somebody like that wasn't an easy task at all. The entire Sun Moon Empire's atmosphere became a little tense and down. Juzi's expression turned dark as she said coldly, Since when have Shrek Academy's graduates become so shameless? Hoi Yu Hao smiled faintly. This is war, and there is only victory or defeat. The winner becomes king, and the loser becomes an outlaw. You must know this, Empress, don't you? Yes, we are no match for you on an open battlefield, and Shrek Academy has already expelled me because of you. Now, I am independent, and I have nothing left to lose. I don't even have a place to eat. Why can't I have my catharsis? And you, those who have taken away my livelihood, shall be my targets. Juzi rolled her eyes. Since when has he become so shameless? I can give you your livelihood. If you join the Sun Moon Empire, I can decide to forgive everything that you've done. Furthermore, I can appoint you as one of the royal families worshipped. We can give you everything you require. Hoi Yu Hao laughed, and his laughter was extremely exaggerated. Really? If that's the case, I can think about it. My demands aren't that high. I've heard that the war god Empress is quite pretty. I already have a wife, so I can't take you as my wife, but surely you can be my concubine. You can just be my concubine. Juzi appeared furious. The Sun Moon Empire's army beneath them fell into an uproar. What was that? That was plain humiliation. Juzi had a glorious reputation within the Sun Moon Empire's military. She was known as a goddess of war, and she was a military genius that the world could only come across once in a blue moon. In this moment, she was being humiliated by her opponent on the battlefield. Furthermore, Xu Tianran only had this one empress since she became the Sun Moon Empire's empress, and he didn't have any mistresses or concubines. Hoi Yu Hao's words were equivalent to humiliating the entire Sun Moon Empire. The Fire Phoenix Legion's soul engineers all felt indignant at the injustice. If not for Juzi's dignity, her authority, they would have lashed out a long time ago. This video will end here.